It's time to expose Sadiq Khan again. It is Monday after all. Every week we have to go through the same thing. But it's a bit of a reminder. This video is about all his empty promises, broken promises and pledges he made when he was running as a candidate to become London mayor, right? We've already talked about Sadiq Khan's destruction of London right now. And when it comes to the net zero agenda, when it comes to him closing down businesses, not helping people, ordinary people in the city, crimes going up. This is about one key pledge he made when he was running to become London mayor, which he said he's going to have 0 days of strikes in the capital, right? We remember those days in 2016 when he was running. He is saying, yes, I will make sure that there are 0 days of strikes. He said that in 2016. But then since then, well, why have there been 12 transport strikes since he became mayor? And we're now going through its 13th day. Today, the mayor is responsible for TfL. We know that, Transport for London. Yet at the same time, why isn't Sadiq Khan keeping his promises? None of that is happening. So, in this video, we're going to show you a recent exchange in City Hall between the Mayor of London and Susan Hall, who is now officially the Conservative mayoral candidate to stand against Sadiq Khan. And she has been quite solid as an assembly member in order to hold Sadiq Khan to account on a regular basis. Now, there are other good candidates out there. Howard Cox from Reform UK is pretty solid, but he hasn't been in City Hall. Susan Hall has been in there having regular debates. So that's one advantage to Susan Hall, but doesn't mean that makes her better than Howard Cox. It just means that she has the experience of how to deal with the swamp of the establishment. Let's go to this video. Thanks to Polytunes, put it together about the debates between Susan Hall and Sadiq Khan, where she exposed the same problem that we just did.
Strikes are ultimately a sign of failure. Every day there's a strike, it causes huge misery and inconvenience to Londoners. As mayor, what I'd do is roll up my sleeves and make sure that I'm talking to everyone who runs public transport to make sure there are 0 days of strikes. Well, obviously that's not going well, is it? So what is your message now to unions looking to arrange more strikes over the next year ahead? Would you like to take this opportunity now to say that enough is enough and they cannot keep going on disrupting Londoners' lives?
We saw for the first time in the history of TfL our budget's going down, deficit going down between 2016 and before the pandemic by working with trade unions, rolling up my sleeves and working with the trade unions who even you called heroes during the pandemic by keeping our city going, allowing our key workers, even you.
Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something that definitely has got a negative effect on Londoners' ability to access the transport network is the vast number of strikes that Londoners have suffered under your mayoralty. You described 35 strikes under Boris as a disgrace, and yet, let me see how many, yes, and yet when you became mayor, you've had 135 strikes under you. Given you promised 0 days of strike, and given that you've opposed every government measure to reduce strikes on public transport, what are your plans to stop the RMT's repeated attempts to hold London to ransom? Interesting, isn't it? It's interesting, isn't it? Because, as I said, you said that 35 was a disgrace when it was Boris Johnson, and yet it's 135, due to be far more after next week, under you. But of course, again, it's somebody else's fault, isn't it?
It's always somebody else's fault. One of the things I've noticed about politicians like Sadiq Khan is that they can literally look at you straight face and lie directly to you or just completely insult you, for example. But the problem with this is that Puritan religious people like Sadiq Khan, he's a Muslim. Both Islam and the Old Testament have a couple of very, very basic values about them, right? It says, don't lie, don't be rude, and try to take responsibility for your own action, right? Somehow Sadiq Khan does the exact opposite of everything that he's been told. So what's the problem? Is the problem that everybody else is bad all the Londoners are bad because they're not listening to the mayor? Is the problem always the central government? Or could it be that the mayor of London, thanks to devolution powers, he has enough powers when it comes to running transport for London, running the policing in London, and of course being in charge of a lot of domestic issues across the capital? It's time for change. It's time not just to get rid of Sadiq Khan. It's time for just same thing I would say about local councils. Same thing with places like London, mayors, to move away from political parties and have independent-minded people who are not connected to any clique, any group, to stand for the interest of the electorate, of the local people. And I'm sick and tired of having political parties running candidates and trying to have candidates across the country who have the same policy program for different parts of the country, even though each part of the country is different. You're going to have all these parties running every single time, and they're going to have their candidates running, for example, in London and in Edinburgh and in Lincolnshire, having the same policy program. It's disgusting. It's a lie. The whole thing is an illusion. It's time to promote independence. Let me know what you think. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.